Welcome to the Luxembourg Private Equity Association. Today we're going to take an in-depth look at the Luxembourg venture capital and private equity space. Talking us through this will be Stephane Pesch, the CEO of LPEA. Stephane brings with him so much of passion and energy for the industry, which is reflective in the way LPEA has done over the last few years. Let's hear from Stephane. Today we have with us Stephane Pesch of the Luxembourg Private Equity Association. Thank you very much for joining us on the Luxembourg Mind, Stephane.
It's really a pleasure to be here, Prash. Thank you.
Super. I'm going to jump right into it. So since you took over the LPEA, the organization has grown to nearly 500 members. You have a strong international presence. I see you traveling everywhere representing us. You have your great Inside Out magazine, which showcases all the great developments here. I wanted to ask you about what's the thought process behind this incredible journey? What's the mental model behind your success?
Excellent question, I would say. So first of all, I would really like to thank here, first of all, my really passionate team. Because without them, all that would have not been possible. It's the same also for our board members and certainly ExCo members, who are also very interesting, very smart, let's say, persons who help us also to define good strategies and push forward really the presence of the LPEA worldwide. But let's say when we took all those kind of strong elements into account, it certainly needs also kind of a very nice, smart strategy which you need to define and to execute. And to respond then to your question, what was the idea behind? It was to really grow the association to, for example, 500 members, but we certainly have more appetite than that. So we should look into, let's say, higher numbers in the future, to be also very dedicated to which kind of categories we should push forward, meaning here certainly favor GPs, because we are really a GP association with fantastic service providers and other experts around, but it's really important to really drag them here to Luxembourg, to have them active in the association, and certainly also to nurture the investors who have also appeared in Luxembourg via the family offices and some others who were already here. So to push, let's say, that kind of ambition and growth, it was really key to have a clear vision on where we should then tap those new talents, those new future members, and represent Luxembourg. So traveling a lot, being very visible, using all the media channels which are, let's say, existing nowadays, so combining also print and certainly social and web, in order then to relay the message and to be quite active.
Okay. It seems like those strategies have certainly paid off, right? Like you've got all these great partnerships, you've got some great GPs in Luxembourg, we've grown a lot as an industry. In the last few years, what have been your biggest challenges and how did you overcome them?
First of all, I would say it was to structure this growth. So, for example, on the thought leadership, that is where then the kind of content is being created. That we had to relaunch and create new technical committees and clubs. Find the right co-chairs, the right passionate experts who wanted to push forward that kind of message and also expertise around their main specific focus or topic. Another challenge we had to cope with was also to, let's say, further grow the team, because at one moment we were really too small, and also at one moment we should potentially see if we would require some bigger logistics and also some more space here for us to invite more and more members to join us, to do our own interviews and meet with many persons simultaneously with very important meetings. So all those things together kind of bring us to the next step of what we should develop over the next 5 years for the LPEA. And that's why any obstacle we see, we like, pragmatically to take those away, to either find a cure if we have one, and or then simply pass those by. And that's why we then really believe in that value creation model, which also applies to the LPEA. And in order then to do so, you need to really have a clear vision on where you are and what you would like to achieve. And if there are, let's say, stones on your way, then let's get rid of those.
Okay. I guess along this path, I see you meeting with GPs, I see you going to conferences, I see you representing Luxembourg on the international stage, you're traveling all the time, you just got back from Paris. Can you give us a sense for what's the average day like in the life of Stephane Pesch?
It's quite energetic and sometimes crazy, I have to admit. So, for example, we were at IPEM, so this famous private equity conference in Paris. There, it was starting already at 7 a.m., getting ready, breakfast, directly going to our booth, meeting with many GPs on the ground, going to listen to some, let's say, fabulous experts of other international firms, having also different meetings around, doing some recordings on our stand, and finishing the day, and that was really well deserved, with our different members in a networking cocktail, where then we also had some representatives of the Luxembourgish government and embassy. We also had sponsors with us, and many, many persons we did not know yet also joined. So that is the perfect mix then to further grow your network and then move on to also again the next stage. What can we do for you, and how Luxembourg could accommodate, let's say, your expectations?
All of that sounds so impactful. It must be very gratifying to be, at the end of the day, to look back and say, I've accomplished so much in just a day. And when you look back, I guess, at your last 3 years, 4 years, it's certainly very gratifying.
It's super intense, but it makes, let's say, it is a pleasure. And it completely makes sense, because here we really understood that private equity was the next big thing, and that already in 2010, and that is really our also main motivation. Yeah. We have just started, if you want so, and we have so many more things to do, and that's exactly what is behind. So this engine, which is fueled by the more interactions we get, the more energy we have, the more strong messages and key messages we have, and the more we relay those two. And again, to see also the sector further growing, and to have those talents also joining Luxembourg, because they have heard of how interesting you and the career you could have here is making sense. Yes. Nowadays with great studies. So really that is kind of the, I would say, the reward for all those efforts.
Okay. When I look at you, it's very easy to get caught up in the success that you've had and say, what Stephane Pesch has done, all these great things. But I want to take a step back. I want to look at, the way you grew up in Luxembourg. You went to the Lycée des Garçons, and I'm curious to know about how growing up in Luxembourg has contributed to your success.
First of all, again, it's not just me, it's really this entire community, and that's really key. So we move as one voice, and that makes, let's say, also this charm of the entire sector. So this openness is very important. To come back to your question, certainly when I did my, let's say, high school years in Luxembourg, that was in the 90s, that really was a different time. So it was way calmer. You did not have any internet nor smartphones, for those who could not imagine that. So let's say it was a little bit different. But what you will find back as a common denominator, and the strength of Luxembourg has always been the openness, multilingual part, and certainly to simply look for, okay, now I will finish with an A-level, where am I going in the future? At that time, you had no Unilux ready for different studies, which was in the make, and so you were kind of forced to go abroad. And that was kind of the challenge, and on the other side, the magic opportunity to go and discover other countries, other cultures, to mingle with other persons you would have never met if you just have done your career here. What is interesting is, therefore, that the Uni Luxembourg is continuing, let's say, this kind of discovery thanks to Erasmus programs, and to do also then some semesters or quarters abroad. That's very important. So that's where I would say the inspiration, creativity of Luxembourg also comes from. We have our own values, our strengths, but we also are, let's say, moving around and looking at great practices everywhere.
Okay. In the same vein of thought, you're very popular in Luxembourg. Everyone knows you. I look around everywhere and I see pictures of you, interviews from you. Do you feel like growing up in Luxembourg has contributed to the strength of your network?
First of all, I would say that, and we heard that many times, that the new rock stars nowadays are entrepreneurs or people who do business. So thank you for that comment, and certainly for all the others who are doing the same. This is really, let's say, magical. It's a different also period. Also here, to really come back to your question, when you grow up in Luxembourg, yes, that's certainly an advantage, because then normally you should be speaking then the 3, 4, 5 languages, depending on if one of your parents is also coming from abroad, yes. Might even be more. Yes. So that's already fantastic, which is not that easy, and it's a gymnastic compared to, let's say, other cultures and other countries. Next to that, it's also, again, back to this openness, that here you simply have the habit, the local market, based on what you do professionally, is sometimes too small, so you need to think worldwide, or at least international, yeah, or European. Yeah. That's very good. So now, here I would say, to grow in Luxembourg, that brings you certainly a certain network of persons who are either, let's say, same-minded, with whom you grew up, you did some sports, but also who did their own career, and it can be politics, yeah, it can be also simply business. They also went abroad, they came back or not, that depends. But here you have certainly a network you could build already. And in the end, when you do also public-private partnerships and also have strong relationships with the, let's say, authorities, public authorities, also to do the visits with political parties again, and or ministers and ministries, it's certainly helpful to also be able to speak in Luxembourgish. Right. But again, here we are that open that also such meetings can certainly be done in English. But again, we always like also to protect the Luxembourgish language, as you can imagine, and which is also then the same for each country.
Sure. It almost feels like growing up here, imbibes you with certain superpowers, which the language thing, the network thing, and just the international cosmopolitan nature of our country. So it feels really, really good about that, especially if kids growing up here.
Yes, and also really a high quality of life. Certainly, people want to discover the world, but at one moment they also might think, is it not a good time to come back to pursue a very international career in Luxembourg? Yes. Because again, it's not because the country is a little bit smaller than our neighbors that you can't, let's say, access the same bright persons you would from other cities, because that's the beauty of the entire sector we also represent. Yeah. You are seeing the same persons even if you live in Paris or in Luxembourg in the end. So it really depends on what the interactions might be, but the access is fabulous.
Speaking of these strengths of Luxembourg, when we look at our industry, we've grown a lot. What strengths have helped us grow so fast, and how should we leverage them more to continue our positive growth?
If I take now the lens of private equity, I would say it has always certainly been the, let's say, fast pace of Luxembourg to implement new regulations and directives in a smart and pragmatic manner. So being, let's say, a pioneer to move quickly and to implement such things with a kind of business friendliness and business sense. And this intuition has always proven right, and we should really continue to keep Luxembourg as competitive as possible on that front. The other one would be certainly the toolbox, because again, for private equity, why are GPs so interested by Luxembourg? It's to use the platform, the hub, in order to access then afterwards some international or European investors via this hub, which is absolutely well recognized by all the biggest LPs in the world, and who have really understood that here you have the experts, you have the experience, you have the multilingual angle, so why not then join us? And that would be, in a nutshell, what we do. Next to that, certainly the economic stability, the political one, that is also certainly helpful. So people know here we are not changing the rules every 5 seconds, and we should have let's say, this continuity, which is very important then.
I think those are great points. I guess the stability certainly plays a significant role in ensuring that firms can come here with the knowledge that they can grow over a time frame. Can I ask you about growth areas? Are there specific areas that you think we can do better with respect to these firms that are coming here, the LPs, the GPs that are coming in here?
I would say sometimes we should not be too shy, and we should be proud of our success without becoming arrogant. That's very important. So you should still have this appetite, this ambition to move on, and then to think or discuss at least with those players what is currently missing in Luxembourg, or what would you favor, what does make sense. That's why also we are so eager to go out and discuss also again with public authorities, with decision makers and takers also about things we could make again either better, quicker, faster and more efficient. That's why, again, back to also the question about the obstacles. When we see some, we need to identify them, we need to analyze what can we do, and then propose and suggest some ideas or remedies. That is really important. So I would say that is really the formula of remaining, let's say, as relevant and also successful as possible, but also thinking with a vision, let's say, about the future. So, for example, space economy, we discussed that also in the past. That really makes sense. That's also why some of our VCs are already interested by these fields, and certainly other investors. And that is something you should not laugh about. You should really favor and push forward. That's really key. Next to that, you have also certainly all the technology parts where Luxembourg can still do a lot about this startup nation, and also to, let's say, thanks to the great incubators, partners we have left and right, in order then to have a speak again as one voice, to help the Startup Association to grow further. Those are kind of the partnership you would expect in order then just as a global industry, but far bigger than just our own corner, in order then to make out of Luxembourg also again the next star and diversify the economy for sure.
Okay. So we've seen a lot of growth, in our industry, specifically when it comes to support functions, risk management, compliance, custodian services. When I put on my CFA hat, I have a slightly personal vested interest in this question. What will it take for us to have similar growth when it comes to front office decision-making roles? We do have some, but our growth is not as strong as the other roles. What will it take?
This is a great question. I mean, we're very proud of, first of all, the evolution of Luxembourg, starting the whole private equity, let's say, adventure with holding companies, moving on to the AFM, the funds, also due to those different moves we just discussed, and then allowing Luxembourg also to evolve on that, so to reach the middle office, to have, let's say, valuation experts, risk managers, compliance, CEO, OOs, CFOs also, and also, as you said, absolutely right, some players who already do the A to Z game, meaning also front office decision taking and also investments and certainly also the fundraising part. I would say we cannot now change Luxembourg in 2 minutes. That is something we need to build as an industry to also feel when let's say some players intend to also further grow those kind of functions, to really jump on the boat, to propose also specific training which would absolutely fit first of all those firms, and also then to let those profiles know, guys, here we have green light, this completely makes sense. Yeah. So there is certainly a tax angle and incentivization which is very important to also move on and to reach that specific goal. I mean, that is part of the game, that's clear, but it's not only that, because in the meantime we could also develop more investor relations and fundraising functions in Luxembourg, which I'm saying is, okay, super interesting and super important, specifically in such complicated times as we are going through, because that part is a bit going slower, but we're absolutely optimistic that once the machine and the engine is again back at its, let's say, average speeds, there will be no problem anymore. But we here need to underline, even private equity, it's not just, let's say, a man on an island. So we need to also integrate all those effects of the global economy into, let's say, our strategies and also of our member strategies. So I would say, yes, we really want to move on again to the next stage. Some players already doing it, as we said. We need to raise that interest also within those groups. But it also needs to make sense, because not everybody would now drag an entire deal team to Luxembourg just simply for the fun's sake. So here also we need either to find or identify, when it's about VC, then interesting startups, which we have, and or potential opportunities to invest in. But, and again, that's an important thing, logistics, they need to function. Because if you're doing that out of Lux, you need to also be able to move quickly out of Lux and then to meet with your biggest investors and or target investments.
And I guess, we are a little blessed to have LPEA here to kind of help us navigate through these times, to help give direction to LPs or GPs who are trying to, grow in these areas. So thank you very much for that.
This is one of our, let's say, strong ambitions.
Fantastic. I want to talk a little bit about the way we market Luxembourg. We talk, so on one side we want to talk about how Luxembourg is, super cosmopolitan, the great quality of life and more. But we also want to balance that so that, we're setting the right expectations when people come here, so they're not disappointed when they come here. How do we strike the right balance when we're trying to showcase what a great place Luxembourg is to the world and attract people?
We also like that approach. I mean, to really, first of all, manage expectations and also kind of announce what we will do and also do what we have mentioned. So in a sense of, yes, Luxembourg can bring you a fabulous career, can help you also further grow your skills, etc. But yes, you first need to identify, not just come here by luck or serendipity and then imagine, okay, I will be hired in 2 minutes. So it requires, as you can imagine, professional preparation, the right skills, the right diplomas, and also the ambition to, let's say, either opt for a direct way into the industry, and if that is for the moment, because of X, Y reasons not possible, to use then some other ways into the game. Again, you can learn the whole, let's say, work via different firms from the other angle. You can also work with excellent service providers where you will really get a fabulous package which could be of high interest later on. I mean, there are ways nowadays where you can also start in this position and then evolve later on or change sides. So again, everything is kind of flexible and mainly depends on you and your curiosity, your will really to move on to the next step. But I would say really, if we go back to that, everything is possible, but you need to believe in yourself and also certainly try to find either mentors, people who might really recognize either your talent or also your really appetite, your strong appetite. But again, Luxembourg, yes, you need to be also realistic. Housing is for the moment a real problem. So for younger talents joining Luxembourg who want to start a career, you need to take that into account, because that might be either a pain and or afterwards then as a kind of a surprise. So that you should directly also calculate into the whole model. And then afterwards, be a little bit patient. So it's not just job hopping every 6 months, which will bring you to your end goals. Because afterwards, people might not really do the right interpretation of such CVs, because yes, might be very talented, but also too impatient or kind of never really fitting in any kind of firm. So there you need also to show that, yes, your vision, that's my line, that's what I want to reach and achieve, but it takes a bit of time.
No, I think that's great. That's very sound advice. I'm going to move us now to the fun segment of the show. I'm going to give you a couple of options, and I'm going to ask you to just pick something on the spur of the moment based on how you're feeling about it. I'm going to start off by presenting you with a scenario. It's a Friday evening. It's 5 p.m. You're having an office party in your fabulous garden back here. What's your poison of choice? Are you going to go for a beer, a wine, or a cremant?
I would say wine and cremant.
Wine and cremant.
Yes,
okay.
Why not?
Okay, very local. There's a PE firm that wants to set up its office in Luxembourg, and they want to find out where to set up their office. Would you recommend Kirchberg or Kloster?
Oh, yes, that's an interesting one. I would say, since we are in Kirchberg, I would say Kirchberg. Very well connected to the tram and the city center. Okay. But Kloster is also very appealing and will be more in the future.
Okay, very good answer. You've had a busy week, you've achieved a lot, and now you want to have a nice relaxed weekend. Would you go for yoga or golf?
Fortunately, not enough time to play golf now, so I would go then for yoga or something relaxing with the family or friends, certainly, and then swimming pool in between.
Okay. I know you do a lot of panel discussions, you do a lot of interviews yourself. The scenario I'm going to give you with is there's a panel discussion happening. Would you rather be the moderator or the panelist?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say I love both roles. Certainly, for an association, being a moderator also completely makes sense, but also vice versa, when we are being asked to describe, to represent the entire sector and certainly some of our members, then we would certainly agree and participate also as panelists. Okay,
fantastic. Last question in this segment. You're about to make a personal investment into the AI space. You know, we've had a lot of progress in the generative AI in the recent past. Would you prefer to enter this investment via the wild ride of VC investments or via the steady, scenic route of PE investments?
Specifically on generative AI, I would go for the VC path. I mean, that would be kind of up and down, but I think it would be interesting to catch that firm rather early.
Sure. Still relatively early days, so I guess that, yes. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to ask you for a couple of pieces of advice now for some of our viewers. When you are making a sales pitch to a PE or a VC firm, trying to get them to move here, you know, I'm a PE or a VC firm, I want to pick which major Western city I want to place my next hub in. What kind of sales pitch would you make to them?
I would stay quite, let's say, specific and focused. Would really say, if you're interested by European funds and investors, choose a European hub, and Luxembourg, therefore, is really the country of choice.
Okay. And I guess, you know, we have so much going for us, so that speaks for itself, right?
Honestly, and then that would be the second round of arguments. We would explain a little bit how the ecosystem, let's say, has evolved, the advantages of choosing Luxembourg, for example, and also the community around. Again, so coming back to the experts, the providers, and certainly also simply the community, which has reached really a very interesting level, where then the interactions really make a lot of sense and are very qualitative.
Okay. The other question I wanted to ask you is, you know, we have a lot of talent working in, you know, compliance, risk management, but a lot of these guys are also pursuing, you know, CFA, Kaya, and they're interested in doing a little bit more. What advice would you give to professionals who are looking to transition from support, back office, middle office functions into front office deal-making roles?
First of all, I would congratulate them for their choice, because it really makes sense, but it requires, again, as we said, discipline, curiosity, hard work, because you do that next to your job, and also to potentially never give up on that idea. So again, as we said, sometimes there are the direct ways into that game, can be then, let's say, thanks to luck, or because you know somebody, network, etc. But also sometimes there are the other ways around. So as long as you gather this experience, which would also be highly favored by those GPs or front office teams, then you will appear on their radar at one moment. But again, if you are too shy and kind of hiding, that might not be the best solution. And therefore, we usually suggest, even to new talents or people who want to re-upskill or kind of change their life philosophy and job, it is really to be as present as possible in our events and also to mingle exactly with those persons. Because here it's really a game of, it's not of being seen and being heard, but again, some visibility plays a role.
Okay. Well, Stephane, this has been great. Thank you very much for the insights. Thank you very much for everything that you're doing for our ecosystem. This has been a great conversation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Prash. It was a pleasure.